We're going to finish off our study of financial maths by making a mind map. So turn your book to the side or get a nice big A3 piece of paper, however you'd like to do it. You're going to need to write quite a lot. So pause the video when you need to copy things down and see if you can preempt what I'm going to suggest next. Okay, so I'm going to give that heading of financial maths mind map. And then I'm going to remind you that the first thing that we dealt with was percentage. Okay, so write as we go now. So if you're going to increase by a percentage, it's the number times 100 plus the percentage that is the increase over 100. But if you're going to reverse an increase, all that happens is these guys swap around. So your 100 plus percentage that was in the numerator now moves to the denominator, and the 100 that was at the bottom now goes to the top. It would definitely be in your interest to rewrite every single one of these formulas because you're going to need to remember them off by heart. With decreasing a percentage, we take our number and we multiply it by 100 minus the percentage over 100. But when we reverse that, we're going to put the 100 on the top and 100 minus the percentage at the bottom. The last one we did together was when you've got to calculate the actual percentage that something is. So they might give you a number before you increased and then a number after you increased or decreased, and then you will always take the bigger one minus a smaller one to get the difference between them. And then you're going to work out what is that difference as a percentage of the original number that you worked with. Your answer will then be in percentage. Okay, so exchange rates, what we did was we had the exchange rate on one side, and it could have been 1 rand to $10 or anything else like that. You put it like that, and then you will put the rands over there and the dollars over there. And it doesn't really matter which is on the top and the bottom, as long as you have both of your rands on the top or both of your rands at the bottom. I'm just going to put their rands on top, and here we had dollars on the bottom. And you just got to keep those guys consistent. And then a reminder that what we do there is we cross multiply and then we solve for whatever we called the X, the unknown amount. The next thing to add to your mind map is simple interest. We need to remind ourselves of that formula. A equals P1 plus IN or I times N, depending on the way you need to remember it. And then we must remember what everything stands for. So A is your accumulated amount or your ending amount. And if you want to put different words on your mind map to the words that I'm using, that is exactly what a mind map is for. It's to map the stuff that's going on in your head. Okay, so maybe instead of principal amount, you might put the starting amount. And maybe for A, you'd put ending amount. Okay, it's just for you to remember what's going on. The I is the interest rate. Okay, and then I just want to make a little note there. We must use the percentage button. Okay, and then N will be your number of years. Okay, so there were other things we did with simple interest. We calculated A, which means we just plugged everything in there. But when we calculate P, I, or N, what we had to do was to sub in the other amounts and then solve for the unknown using our equations skills. Just a reminder then, if you're solving for I, you must convert to percentage by multiplying by 100 right at the end to get to R. the actual rate. And then remember, if they ask you for the amount of interest, you're just going to take the end amount minus the beginning amount, and then you will get the amount of interest. Our next subheading is hire purchase, and I want you to remember that that is always simple interest, so it is going to be using the same formula as simple interest. Okay, and then there's a few extras we had to remember with hire purchase. It was the deposit, and I'm going to write that with a question mark because maybe it needs to be taken off, maybe it doesn't. You might have to calculate, and then you must subtract from, I'm going to say, price tag before you put that subtracted answer into your P amount. Okay, so the P amount there, that is the amount without the deposit, because the deposit is the only thing that does not get interest. The other thing we had to remember with hire purchase is there might be monthly repayments, and then we've just got to convert between years and months. And sometimes they gave backwards questions where you had to go and work out the full amount and they gave you the monthly repayments. So we might have to calculate monthly repayments, or you might have a backwards question where you are given the monthly repayments. And then you've got to multiply by the number of months to figure out the total payment. The other thing that they sometimes did is they put insurance or some other fees, and that had to be added to the repayments. They may give you an annual amount, which you've then got to divide by 12, or they might give you a monthly amount, but you just add it on to the existing monthly repayment. Last subheading on your mind map is compound interest. And there we need to remember the formula that has the n in the exponent. Okay, it's going to follow all the same rules as simple interest, but when we solve for P or I, we're going to find it a little bit more tricky. Okay, so it's the same as simple interest, but if you solve for P or I, you're just going to have to undo a power. So for example, you might have to take the fourth root of something, and you're going to need to work on those equations solving skills to be able to solve for unknowns here. There was nothing fancy about compound interest other than typing correctly into the calculator and making sure you know which is which, the A and the P. So just a comment here, annotate your questions and do highlighting because there's lots of words. Okay, so label, what's the A, what's the P, what's the I, what's the N, and just make sure you're getting them the right way around. Okay, so make sure you know what the unknown is. You've got to identify. And then write down what A equals, what P equals, what I equals, and what N equals. It's a really good way to just put it all down, and then you know where you're starting from. Make sure that you always round off to 2 decimal places because it's money. So all answers that are money answers must have 2 decimal places. And in fact, in mathematics, everything gets 2 decimal places anyway. And lastly, you've done a mind map now, but this is not your studying. Your studying is doing past papers and previous examples. This is just a note to go back to when you've completely forgotten finance and it's your June exam or it's your November exam and you need a little reminder to just get the basics into your head. And from there onwards, you can then go and do all the exercises and past papers that are your actual studying.